Okay, so now let's have a little look at the drum breaks, and really the key to getting these breaks to roll nicely is to leave some of the natural offset or the natural swing in the drums, and this means we're not going to quantize stuff too heavily. And there's really two techniques I want to show you of how we can achieve this. And the first one I've got here is actually to put longer slices in. So you can see I've got this amen break here, but rather than chopping it at all the individual slices, I've put in slightly kind of longer sections or phrases of where I put my slices in this break. And there's also two settings I've turned on, and one of them is play to end, which is going to mean the slices are going to play through one another to the end of the whole sample. And the next one is mono, so I'm going to make the break have one voice, and that means whenever I trigger a new slice, it's going to cut the previous one off. And the way this is really working is we can program quantized in Midi, so we can always program on the grid in Midi, and that's going to mean our kicks and snares, whenever we program them in, they're going to be quantized. But then by dragging out the Midi notes, we can bring in some of the natural groove of the drummer. And so your kicks and snares are going to be mainly quantized, but then all of the rest of the hits are going to be left a bit more natural.
This is how I'd start doing the breaks. If you listen to this line here, that's just the one straight up break as it was. This is the kick drum here, and this is the snare, so you can split it. And you can do whatever you want with it really. I'll just do a stupid pattern here. So that's the main sort of jungle technique of making the drums.
Okay, so the second technique I want to show you is actually something called gate to tempo, and what we've got to do is slice the break up at all the hits this time, and then in Logic I would right click and convert to new sampler track, so I'm converting the audio to Midi. And then one other thing I have to do is slice this new Midi region to fit perfectly with the size that the original break was. And then what I can do is actually warp the Midi to fit. This is a 1 bar break, and so I can warp the Midi to 1 bar at my project tempo. And what's actually happening here is I can get this break to roll around at my new drum and bass speed, and I haven't time stretched it and I haven't pitched it up, but I'm actually just gating all the hits. So if I kind of move these audio regions around, this is what's really happening, is I'm just chopping the break off all these different points to make it actually retain its groove at the project tempo. But what happens when you do this is you get all the kind of original groove comes through in the Midi here. And so what I would usually do is quantize some of these. Those are the kicks, this is the snare, and then I know this is all the shuffly stuff, and that's kind of music, so I don't need all the music. So this is all the part of the break that I can really use. And then I would take this little phrase or section and then move the whole thing along. So the snare's quantized, but then all these hits, even though they've been moved along, they're still retaining some of that natural groove and shuffle. And so then I can come and program my break, but I would always retain the hits having this shuffle in them. So whenever I programmed this section, I would drag it along like this and make sure that all these hits were still retaining that groove. And so that's the basic premise for how I did the breaks in this project. And the real advantage to doing it this way is you have control over all the hits. And so when you're doing your break layering like I've done here, you can see I've got these shuffles. I'm having to offset them in this layered break to match with my original break. And so as I'm building up these layers, in order to get the layering tight, you have to really match up the hits and get the grooves of both the layers to sound good together. For this style of drum and bass, it's really common to layer lots of breaks together, and I've actually done 6 breaks in my track, and some of them are more tight and snappy and some are more tonal, and I've got some with rides in. So you want to find a mix and blend of lots of different breaks to give you lots of options when you're doing this layering. And then I have 2 more tonal breaks here. So I have this funky Nassau, And you can hear there, whilst the breaks aren't copying each other exactly, they're all playing a similar groove and they're really following this primary break. So I kind of matched all of those breaks to this one, and that's just to make things sound cohesive, because it can get really crazy when you're doing multiple breaks if you've got too many different conflicting ideas going on. So I think even though there will be little bits of variation happening, keeping kind of the core rhythm is important. So with break layering, the choice of breaks is really important, and also getting the hits to align and getting everything to sound tight is also really important. But there's a few other things you can use to help make everything sound more cohesive, and one of them is actually tuning the breaks around. So pitching certain breaks up will make them sound a little bit tighter, more snappy, and sometimes they just need to be pitched around a little bit to make certain breaks work together. And then the next most important thing is actually just to use EQ, and I have tonally shaped every single one of these breaks to fit with each other and to bring the most of them out, or to shape them for their purpose in this break layer. So you can see with these ride breaks, I don't really need any of the low energy from those breaks, as I'm just taking the rides and the crashes. With these ones, I'm pulling out annoying resonances and boosting the highs and just molding everything to really fit nicely together. So it's really important to use EQ to tonally shape your breaks. Is probably the most useful tool in your arsenal there. The final one for me is actually to program a 16 bar loop right from the beginning. Now, lots of you will probably start just doing maybe a 4 bar or an 8 bar loop with your drums, and then you'll move on to other instruments. But I think it's really important to stick with the drums, and at the very least do a full 16 bar cycle with lots of variations and interest. And if I play you this break, this is how I started this project, is programming this first 16 bars of this top break, and then I layered in my new breaks one by one following this same rhythm. And the whole point is you put in all this effort at the start of your project and build up all these layers, and then when you actually come to the arrangement stage of making the track, you can see all I've had to do here to build up this entire drum sequence is just mute things and bring them in and out at different times. And so it makes it really easy when you get to the arrangement stage, and I can show you here just in this little section of the track what's going on with these drums.